Welcome to the Climate Tech Podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about nature-based solutions and how we can overcome the barriers for scaling and implementing them in cities. We're going to look closer at policies, regulations, and the need for capacity with a focus on the fast-growing cities of the Global South. My name is Lasse Hemmingsen, and with me today are Julia Rocha Romero, advisor on nature-based solutions at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, Gabriel Mangolini Neves, environmental engineer in the Municipality of Campinas in Brazil, and Monalisa Sen, associate director in ICLEI, South Asia. So welcome all three of you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us here.
So, we have urban areas growing rapidly with increasing climate risks like flooding, heat waves, pollution. And in low and middle income countries, we have particularly vulnerable cities. Several of them are going to be very, very big in the coming decades. So I want to start out with asking all three of you, what can nature-based solutions do in this situation? Let's start with Julia.
Thanks, Lasse. This is a really important question. I think it's sort of lies in the heart of the matter for us working with nature-based solutions. We're constantly thinking about what can it actually accomplish and how can we measure it? How can we ultimately not promise, but say to cities that this will yield certain results. And I think it's really important to look into NBS also because of all the co-benefits that it offers. And when we're looking into these growing cities, in low and middle income countries, they have several vulnerabilities already in the bag, socioeconomic vulnerabilities and things that are very structural. And in this regard, nature-based solutions can actually come in and not only support, for example, climate adaptation strategies or promote green-blue infrastructures, but also promote things that enhance human well-being. So, for example, parks and recreational areas that will ultimately support mental health or health in general, areas where people can meet and also promote social cohesion. These things that we maybe practitioners would call soft results, but that are actually not soft at all because they yield tangible results and ultimately support how people have the quality of life inside urban areas. I think
so it's not just about climate resilience.
Yes, I mean, it is about resilience. I feel like it's the resilience of the people as well. But yes, climate resilience and the resilience of populations. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Then Mona, we were talking nature-based solutions and the challenges and the risks faced by cities, growing cities, and in a growing climate crisis. What's your perspective on the possibilities and maybe also the limitations?
Nature-based solutions have a huge potential, and they are going to be the key factor which will drive sustainable cities now and in the future. If I restrict my discussion right now to India, from where I belong, there are several cities who are doing pilot scale nature-based solutions, and these have shown success. The major challenge which is now coming is to upscale these initiatives. So there are different kinds of issues like capacity gaps, financial gaps, policy gaps, which are preventing this upscaling from happening. But at the pilot scale, whichever city or even the provincial government is implementing, they are seeing the value of nature-based solutions and also in the long run, the benefits that come through the cost-benefit analysis over a longer period. That's what cities are now seeing, and they are shifting towards more of nature-based solutions. So the potential is huge. It's just that the advocacy for the same, capacity building for the same, is something which has to be focused.
Okay. And I know you have a good example that we'll get to later in the podcast that I'm really looking forward to. But last and very much not least, Gabriel, you are in Campinas in Brazil, and you're actually implementing some of these solutions we're talking about. So I'm really interested in hearing also your perspective on this.
Thank you. In Campinas, we are trying to bring nature-based solutions in a way to rethinking what we actually are doing in the last decades in our cities. In Campinas, we have unplanned growing in the peripheral areas of these urban areas. So now we have to bring more natures to these neighborhoods, and these challenges with the climate crisis bring more challenge for us. So in Campinas, we are trying to implement linear parks as a way to bring the benefits, as Julia said, but also all the co-benefits, all the goals that other departments have inside of the city hall, and also bring the civil society to the table to discuss with us these projects.
Okay, so it's a very holistic approach. For the listeners who might not be familiar with what a linear park is, could you explain that quickly?
Linear park, for Campinas, linear park it's a concept that around the world they are using, but for Campinas, it's more about recovering the degraded areas through the rivers in the riparian forest areas, but not just with the ecological functions. We are trying to bring the social function to this space, to this territory, to bring more self-belonging to the citizens that lives nearby these areas. We have to associate with the social functions. That's why linear parks, now it's a solution for us.
Mm-hmm. It serves more than just one function.
Yes. If we can list some example, when we bring nature for the city, we plant trees, and we are bring biodiversity again to inside the urban area. But also we have these co-benefits or benefits that decrease the temperature of these areas, increase the quality of air, bring more nature to the mental health who lives nearby. But also, when we bring social functions, we can bring the citizens to the nearby the natures using playgrounds, gyms, integrate to the ecological parts, and also bring other goals from other departments that we have inside of the city hall. Like we have the macro drainage plan in Campinas and other cities, so we can combine the goals from macro drainage inside this area. We have cycle path plan,
like plans to connect different parts of the city with bike paths.
Yes, we have urban gardening programs that we can and we have to get a link with our projects.
Involving all possible stakeholders. Julia, do you wanna come in?
Yes, I'd like to complement on Gabriel's point. I think that this is really relevant. Piggybacking as much as possible, or understanding the extent that nature-based solutions can be piggybacked across other types of policy domains is really relevant, because of course it can be beneficial from a biodiversity perspective, from a health perspective, and for urban cooling strategies. And many cities have that kind of policy in place, or even an institutional arrangement for that. So I know, for example, the city of São Paulo, where I'm from, there's the adaptation plan at hand. There's also the city master's plan that makes provision for nature. So these are clear areas where a nature-based solution can actually contribute and be quite well housed in this backstage of a sort of a policy scenario, and also within the city's own institutional arrangements, so that even if it's in a pilotable stage, it can be enhanced or reproduced in other areas according to the climate needs and the societal needs at hand, etc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've all three mentioned the co-benefits and all the major benefits you get from nature-based solutions, both in terms of like if we talk about the main goal of maybe preventing flooding or reducing heat, but there are all these other benefits that come along with it. And the potential that Mona also mentioned is huge. So since in this podcast we're going to talk about the barriers, I would like to get into that. Why are nature-based solutions not used more? Why are they underutilized as it is now? And I know, Julia, we have this publication looking into this from the policy, regulatory, and the capacity point of view. So maybe if you can go into a little bit more detail on this specifically, why is it that we don't see more nature-based solutions being implemented as it is right now?
Thanks, Lasse. Yeah, and that's exactly what we set out to do with this publication. And of course, it's not so simplistic that we can say, well, these are the challenges, and once we address them, everything should be fluid, and nature-based solutions should be popping up in left and right in all cities. It's not as simple as that, and so it's a very nuanced picture that we're trying to paint. But in broad terms, we categorize them in these three boxes. So the capacity barriers, and when we talk about capacity barriers, is the need for developing awareness as well. So awareness and technical skills within municipalities to understand and work with nature-based solution. In the capacity domain, you also have the education of the local community. So there's a lot of education that goes behind that too. We don't dive so much into education in the publication, but this is definitely a part that we have highlighted. It's important because ultimately the local community will be utilizing that nature-based solution, will be inhabiting that space where nature-based solution is, whichever format, of course. And so their awareness on what is for and how to be maintained is also key. And then the second one, we look into this regulatory and policy barriers. So that is very, very important because without the right regulations in place, it's very hard to attract the investments and also attract the participation from private stakeholders. So and also it's very hard to make things tangible in terms of when you're trying to develop an NBS at scale. So maybe you get away with doing a successful linear park in one part of the city, but it's very hard for you to transform that park into a project where, that is taking place in an area of the city that floods. So in a very, very in a sponge level. So for you to reach that kind of scale, you actually need to have regulations in place that make provision for public land usage, etc. And here we also highlighted that there is it's a positive thing that nature-based solution can be ultimately housed in different parts of city levels. We mentioned that it could be housed in within health and within biodiversity, etc. But ultimately, this could be a challenge too, because there's a lack of coordination between the incumbent institutions. Not all of them will perhaps share enough data or have the skills, going back to the barrier, to implement. So this capacity, regulatory policy, and then the financial barriers that I will mention as well, they're very interlinked. And there's several feedback loops involved. This is why we focused on the three of them, because we understand them to be the major bottlenecks.
Mhm. And we have a whole podcast episode specifically on this part, and also another publication that just came out.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's great that we can look at the three barriers: policy, regulation, and capacity here, and then we do have the other podcast episode delving into finance, because that's also a big issue.
So yeah, those three were what we understood to be the main bottlenecks, as I have mentioned.
And so now we get to the part of the podcast where we look from ICLEI South Asia, from Campinas, and then from you, Julia, on how do we overcome these barriers and what can cities do around the world. So what do you, if you look at the policy barriers, Mona, what do you see? How do we overcome these?
See, the whole thing begins with capacity building and awareness generation on the strength of NBS. Once that gets built in, then even if the policy environment is not there, things start moving. India, Nepal, Bangladesh, countries in South Asian region do not really have any policy which specifically focuses on NBS. Till now, we don't have any such thing. But we've been working in several cities whom we're happy to call them as champion cities. That's where we have been able to showcase the strength of NBS to not just the political leadership but also to the citizens and the civil society. That's where then the cities themselves have started taking steps wherein they're allocating municipal budgets to nature-based solutions. They're trying to look for financial options through corporate social responsibilities of the corporates working in the city. So the whole thing lies with how we can build the capacity and awareness on the strength of nature-based solutions. An example of the same is the city of Kochi, where we've been working for a very long time. When we started the biodiversity work, we developed the city biodiversity index. From there, the gaps that were there, we took that on and developed their local biodiversity strategy and action plan. In all this, our interactions were with the entire city, wherein we had ward level meetings as well. So in each of the wards, there are 74 wards in the city, and we had ward level meetings where anybody of the ward could walk in and have a discussion with us. This is what led us to understand the actual problems, and also for them to understand that nature-based solutions can play a big role in addressing their problems. Another advantage of these larger stakeholder meetings was we could talk to the elderly people who still have the traditional ecological knowledge, which is basically, again, nature-based solutions, and that's how the younger generation understood where they're losing out on such wealth. So now we have got to a stage where the city of Kochi now regularly allocates 10% of their municipal budget to nature-based solutions and to actions which are listed in their local biodiversity strategy and action plan to implement them on their own. So there are case studies where it happens, but this happened only because of the amount of awareness generation, capacity building that we did. And of course, also we've done some pilot projects in the city on canal restoration, as well as developing pollinator gardens, which the city found of interest, and it's helping the city. And that's how they want to now take it ahead further and upscale it.
So capacity and awareness comes first, and then policy regulation will follow. I really want to just emphasize the point you made, that there is already this knowledge, especially from older generations, like nature-based solutions are, maybe it's a newer term, but the solutions themselves are not new. This is in some ways going back to how, for example, how the river went through a city previously, because people knew that when it rains a lot, it floods. So we can't build canals just out of concrete to guide it through the city, because it'll overflow. And other solutions like that. It's not new knowledge, but it's maybe a new way of thinking about it or looking at the potential. When we look at Kochi, you mentioned some of the solutions that are implemented there, but could you just if there are more, I'd be really interested in hearing what is the impact, what is the result of the work so far there?
So the local biodiversity strategy and action plan of Kochi identified 9 critical ecosystems, out of which canals is one of them. So the city regularly faces flooding because these canals, like in most cities, are now dumped with solid waste. They are encroached upon. So they're no longer the free-flowing canals that the city earlier used to have. And the regular thing of dredging canals happens every year, and yet it is not giving any tangible solution to the city. So that's how the city leadership also wanted to look into a different way of addressing this issue. So we did a feasibility analysis of undertaking canal restoration using green-gray solutions. That is done in one canal, and another canal we've also put in. One is an organic waste composter to address the solid waste that is being dumped, and for the nature-based solutions to improve the water quality, we've put in floating wetlands, which the city is now maintaining on their own. So these 2 examples showcase to the city that this is very much possible. Based on the work that the city is supporting, or that we have been doing in the city of Kochi on canals, Kochi has been selected as a generation restoration city by UNEP, wherein again the city is working on canal restoration in a 3rd canal in the city. So it's something which is now picked up, and the city leadership, the political leadership, is ready to upscale the work that we have done in the feasibility report once we show them as a pilot. So we are now working on a municipal bond for canal restoration using green gas solutions. Once we are able to show the success of that, the city is ready to upscale it to all the other canals in the city. And even in this municipal bond, the city is probably going to contribute between 20 to 30% of the entire budget that's needed. So this is one of the bigger success stories that we have. Another one is that another critical ecosystem that the city had identified was agriculture. This is one of those cities which still have some amount of agriculture left, at least on the outskirts. So, and the city understood with all these discussions that we've had, the surveys that we did, that the level of pollinators is drastically reducing in the city. That is how the city, in discussions with us, agreed to set up a pollinator garden, which we did at a pilot scale at a park which the corporation themselves now maintain. And seeing that, the city corporation is now investing small amount of money to make pollinator gardens in several schools in the city which have space. So this is another thing which the city is supporting on their own to improve another critical ecosystem that the city has identified in their LBC.
Okay. Just for quick reference, how big is Kochi?
Well, India, our last population census was in 2011. That was about 11 million people.
That's, I mean, depending on the context, that could be a very big city. For example, in Denmark.
Yeah. The other thing is Kochi is very close to a global biodiversity hotspot, the Western Ghats. So that's how biodiversity is very critical over there, even though a lot of urbanization.
Okay, even more critical than in other places. Gabriel, from your point of view, implementing in the municipality, do you also agree that it's awareness raising and capacity has to come first for the policy to follow and the regulation and the impacts?
Yes. In the case of Campinas, we starting more than a decade ago, try to understand the environmental parts of the city. So we designed the green municipal plan, the water resource municipal plan, and so on, to understand better the environmental part of the city. And even though we didn't know yet that NBS it's a concept, we understand that inside of the urban area we didn't have green areas with social functions enough to the citizens. This is the first criteria that we find when we designed this. And since then, we are starting to understand better that these solutions that we designed in 2016, implementations of linear parks, it's a NBS. So first of all, we try to understand the green areas, distributions of the green areas inside the urban areas, but now bring other plans like climate action local plan, understand better the master plan of the city. We are combining the environmental criteria with other urban criteria. So now we understand where we want to implement nature-based solutions. Now we want to implement 49 linear parks inside the urban area of Campinas. It's almost 800 hectares. And for this, the first step, we insert the linear parks and other environmental elements from the Green Municipal Plan inside of the master plan of Campinas. So now, as a structuring element of the master plan, we have all the green elements.
Because then you would then need to have everything approved by transport department or water department. How does that work? I can imagine there are some bureaucratic barriers there.
Yes, the master plan, it's a huge discussion for the cities in Brazil because it's the main legislations of the city. Who gets more attentions, that's who have more data, more diagnostics, more prognostic. That's why we could insert this inside of the master plan. But this is the just first step, because this element, the environment elements, it's one level of the urban areas. Like there is transportations level, housing levels, and so on. The departments of the city are dispute territory inside the city. I believe this is the first barrier for us, the dispute of the territory. But now we try to understand in the opposite way. actually we don't have to dispute the territory. We have to combine our goals to bring one element that achieve all the goals that we have, not just inside the city hall. So
instead of competing for the resources, pitting parks against cycle paths or whatever else, whatever another department in the city might be focusing on, there's no good in competing for limited resources. You need to think holistically and look at solutions that can check all the boxes for different departments.
yes, that's why the linear park so evolve in the city of Campinas, because we bring the cyclepath plan inside of the linear parks. We bring the macro drainage. So we are trying to bring all the elements, not just environmental elements, but all the elements that have in the city hall to achieve the linear park's goals, but also their goals. That's why we could, and we can combine resources that you said to implement these nature-based solutions.
Gabriel, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So actually, out of curiosity, so I understand, so you would develop 49 linear plans based on the pilot that you presented before, or linear parks, I'm sorry. And were these, the identification of where they should go, was it also kind of overlaid with climate vulnerability data or information from Campinas? So areas that maybe are more prone or more vulnerable to climate stressors.
Yes. That's the nice thing that we have in our linear park program. That's we started in 2016 as just a view of deficit of green areas with social functions through the neighborhoods. So just this one criteria. Then we hired a study to understand better a multi-criterial elements from each linear park that's having these 49 linear park lists. So now we have social criteria, infrastructure criteria, and so on. And it's finishes like 2021, I believe. And now we have the climate action local plan that bring these other layers. It's the climate risks to the level of the linear park. So now I understand better where are the linear parks that will achieve some goals to bring more adaptations to the neighborhoods, and thinking about flooding, and other parts think about heat waves. So I just add some layers to understand better the prioritizations. So now, if we have a financing bring by our mayor of the thematic of climate, I have a list of linear parks to bring to them. If they have some things about heat waves, I have. If they have some opportunity to this specific neighborhoods, I already have also a linear park to bring to this neighborhood. So this is how we are trying to implement the linear parks. Understand all the criteria that we have on the table, and the opportunity will bring the prioritization of this linear park.
That's really interesting, because I think that once you have that kind of data at hand, and I understand that this was commissioned, it just makes it so much easier to find what kind of solutions could be applied. Yeah, so the example from Kochi is I think it's really important, because in some parts of the city, from what you were saying and also what we see in other parts of the world, you can actually combine. So nature-based solutions doesn't have to be an either or. There's a lot of interlinkages, and there's a lot that nature-based solutions can still contribute when being mixed with traditional, what we call gray infrastructure. So in the example of Campinas, understanding the climate risks means that you know how and when nature-based solutions can be applied, and if they cannot be applied, how can it be complemented with gray infrastructure. So I think that's also very important, because in many cases, and that's key for cities in low and middle income countries that are also coastal cities. They're very, very, very vulnerable. So at some point, you will need to consider hard gray infrastructure, and that there will be limits to how much nature-based solutions can do for certain levels of climate risks.
I guess it also plays into if you think short term or long term, because a lot of nature based solutions do have quite a long span before they are fully effective. Like planting trees
Exactly.
takes a while. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to compliment 2 seconds because
Yeah.
I think it's an important point for us, because being part of nature, they were also subject to climate change themselves. So their ability to function and provide all what the services that we call ecosystem services, or they will also be impacted by the climate crisis. So having this in mind and having the data to support how much NBS can provide in the coming decades is important for cities.
Hmm. I also like at least the way it sounded to me, if you have the data and you can share the knowledge and show this is what these solutions will do in impact, and you have the numbers or the projections, then the solutions kind of sell themselves. It's not hard to convince departments at City Hall or mayors or other municipal actors that this is a good idea, as long as you have that.
Yeah.
Mona, from ICLEI, I know you work with lots of cities, lots of municipalities on capacity building. What would you say are I don't want to keep using the word barriers, but the challenges and how to overcome them?
The biggest challenge that is there is that in the city corporation there is no ecologist, there are only engineers. So they, by training, do not understand what is biodiversity, what is ecosystem service, and how that can be related to urban services. So that's the biggest lacuna trouble that is there. So one has to start right from scratch to be making them understand that biodiversity is beyond one tree and one bird. And what, because for them, biodiversity is just tree plantation that horticulture department will take care of and plant some trees in parks. That's all that the city corporation thinks about biodiversity. So the whole thing that has to begin is trying to connect biodiversity and ecosystem services with the engineers and the corporation staff. Once they understand what this is, what we are talking, and it will ultimately help in the urban services for which they themselves are working, that's where the bottleneck is. And once that is addressed, that's what's going to smoothen out the process. And also, how and what to do. That's another hurdle that we see, that some of the cities do understand, but then they lack on the fact as to what they can do and how that can be done. So even small scale things can make an impact is what needs to be conveyed to cities.
Mm-hmm. So it's not this unsurmountable new concept that's really hard to understand and implement and very expensive. It can actually be small, simple, and like we touched upon before, solutions that people already know because they've been done for centuries or millennia. You mentioned the national level, and I also want to get into national regulation here, because we talk cities, and that's where the risks are, and implementation has to happen. But what about the national level? What about national plans, national policies, national regulation? Julia, both from the report and the barriers there, but also just in general, what is your perspective on that? The national level, and maybe even taking it to the global level. We're talking NDCs and NAPs and Paris Agreement and climate goals.
That's a that's a big order, but it's also really where we get to capitalize on a lot of the momentum that cities are getting. We know IPCC is launching in 2027 the special report zooming in on cities. Cities are also, or urban areas are increasingly featured on NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. So there's a lot of room for NBS to come in and present solutions on the ground at an urban level. The conversation between national and local is key, because of course, even though a lot of cities, and we have so many examples, have really put out climate ambition and implementation, it is very beneficial when the two are aligned. There's a lot more synergies, and then of course for the financing aspect, it just means that the enabling conditions are there. From an international perspective, of course, we look at this quite closely. In the last year's adaptation gap report, we dived a little bit into the urban content in NDCs, and we can see that there's a lot of NDCs that have an adaptation component looking into nature-based solution. And actually, ecosystem-based adaptation, which also encompasses nature-based solution, are the second most self-reported item by cities, and that's saying a lot. The third one, just for references on behavior and educational actions, which again kind of mirrors what we were discussing before on education and capacity building. And this is a very important year for us, as it's a very important year of celebrating the Paris Agreement, and it's also the year where countries are supposed to present their NDC 3.0, as we call it. So there is an expectation that cities will be increasingly more featured in them.
And nature-based solutions with that.
In nature-based solutions with that, exactly. And even in the COP Brazil's the COP presidency this year, and the letter that came out for the COP presidency last week was highlighting the role that subnational levels have to play when it comes to increased ambition and implementation, particularly on adaptation. And again, here there's a huge opportunity for NBS to fill in some of these gaps. So I think it's very important for us as practitioners to understand the conversations, as I mentioned before, between national and local, and for example, national biodiversity strategies and action plans, what we call NBSEPs, have a really big opportunity for nature-based solutions there. Of course, with the biodiversity focus, but offering several co-benefits for other areas, including human health, for example, to cite one where the link is very strong. But again, it's just putting the ambition out there doesn't mean that things get implemented. So having all of those things that we've been talking about, capacity and awareness, those are ultimately very important to ensure that the ambition gets, boots on the ground and implemented.
Exactly, and boots on the ground, and we also mentioned NDC 3.0 and upcoming COP in Belém, Brazil. So I think that takes us back to you, Gabriel. In your experience, you've worked with this in Campinas for quite a while now. How have you seen the link between what's happening in Campinas and national policies or national ambition even? Is there a clear link there, or has it been more disjointed?
There is a link. We have there is a link just because we have a lot of partnerships that bring us to the table in the federal level. I believe in that because it's not easy to all the cities in Brazil. We have more than 5,000 cities, and most part of these cities is small cities that we don't have the technical staff enough to get out of the city for a day to discuss with the federal government. But Campinas have this opportunity to, with partnerships like ICLEI, South America in our case, but also WRI and others NGOs that try to link the ideas and the actions and planning that we have in Campinas in the federal level. So just because we have this kind of partnerships, we have the opportunity to link the federal with the local level.
There are some experiences then going from Campinas and either up to the federal level or to other cities, so that you can share what you're learning while you're implementing these parks and other nature-based solutions.
Yes, it's not just linear parks, but also like we have a program called Reconecta RMC. It's reconnecting the metropolitan regions of Campinas, and this program uses it as an example of how can we discuss with other cities, between cities, to the state level, like the ecological economical zoning of the states of São Paulo. And also we have these linear parks examples that scale up for the federal level in 2 programs that we discussed with the federal government. But just because Campinas and the big cities have this kind of partnerships or associations that could scale to the discussions to the federal levels, not for any cities in Brazil, this link.
So there's a need for increased knowledge sharing on a national level, both bottom to top and then more horizontally between cities.
Les, can I just make a comment here? I didn't want to leave this part of what Gabriel is saying, and I think what you just said as well. We've highlighted this a lot in the publication, at least in the policy brief. We've mentioned how important it is for cities to have this knowledge exchange, especially cities in low and middle income countries, so south to south, and also south to north, because a lot of cities that are growing so fast, they have to be extremely creative when it comes to developing solutions that can cater to various issues, adaptation, mitigation, and they're competing for space, as Gabriel mentioned. So having platforms where cities can exchange knowledge and it's very helpful because they are being impacted often by similar stressors and they also have similar vulnerabilities at hand. So I just wanted to underscore how important that is. And Mona already mentioned the generation restoration work developed by UNEP, where there is a lot of exchange and other organizations do the same. And that's really beneficial for cities.
I think that's a really good point, and also kind of leads me to my next question. Let's add to that knowledge exchange, because I want to ask you, all 3 of you, which lessons you want to share with other cities. Like what is the most important lessons learned, either through the work on the ground or researching nature-based solutions or working regionally? So we can start with you, Mona. What would you say are the most important lessons for cities who are struggling with the impacts of the climate crisis?
The most important lesson that all cities now need to understand is the potential that nature-based solutions have. And for that, I think when, like I've since beginning been saying, capacity building and awareness is a key, but it's also a lot dependent on the city leadership. So if they are tuned and they are made aware of such things, a lot of things happen. So the key lies in finding your champions within the city and working with them to make them understand the potential of nature-based solutions and how to implement them further, and also what to implement. Like everything green is not nature-based solution. That's also another issue. So it just needs one to find out the champions in the city and then work with them. They will in turn mobilize the rest of the stakeholders who are needed to come together.
I think that could move us on to a person who could be one such champion, Gabriel.
I don't know if I can be named by a champion, but and I don't know if the idea, but what we're trying to understand here in Campinas, it's, of course, we know that we have to find financial research to implement nature-based solutions. But before that, we have a lot of steps that we have to achieve in the local level. We have to understand what we want, the diagnostic, the prognostic of the cities, and link it with all the departments that have goals and plans for the same territory, as we said before. Mm-hmm. But also, we have to know how can we design projects. The nature-based solutions, the first step is, one of the main steps is design projects, base projects, and then executive projects. And then we have the knowledge enough to implement. This is a huge barrier for us in Campinas, and all, if I can say, every city in Brazil has the same. And if you look for the city hall, it's not the same in case of the infrastructure department. They have the knowledge for design projects, but the gray infrastructure projects are like several years ago, a decades ago, they built department sectors to design this kind of projects. So now the barrier or the choose that we have to choose, the pathway that we have to choose is like, we will convince or bring knowledge for NBS's nature-based solutions to this kind of departments, the grey infrastructure department, to change their minds or also bring this kind of projects for them, or we will bring or implement our sector that bring more projects linked to the nature-based solutions. This is the first step that we have to achieve here in Campinas. We didn't know the answers, okay? So now we are combining all kind of answers. Try to bring some guys, some staffs from this department, and bring other departments. Convince the mayor that this is a huge thing. So all have to get inside of the project, but it's not easy to convince even the mayor and also all the departments, because they have their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And we are still thinking about each box have its goals, and not the goals for the cities, the same goals for the cities. This is a huge things that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we are talking later, but the social involving social citizens to the projects, it's, I believe now it's the mainly parts or step to the success of this kind of projects. We are implement this kind of projects inside the territory, and who will use is the citizens who lives nearby. So if we didn't bring them together in the project phase, probably this project is gonna fail in medium or long term.
Yeah, to ensure the sustainability and the usability by the people it's actually for. So, Julia, coming back to you and also to the report, because I know it comes with recommendations.
Thanks, Lasse. Yes, we've made several recommendations on many of the items that we've had the pleasure to discuss today with Gabriel and Monalisa on ways to overcome these barriers at the capacity level, at the regulatory and the financial barriers. But I would like to actually highlight another takeaway point for us here, also based on the discussions that we've had. I think a big takeaway message for us working inside cities and implementing nature-based solutions, or interested in continue to scale them in these growing areas in the world, I think it's very important for us to remember that we are in a very crucial moment in climate history. I think we kind of have to keep our head very leveled in the game ahead. We were calling the decade of action, and it's supposed to be exactly this. We need all hands on deck on the mitigation side of things, but particularly also on the adaptation side of things, because ultimately there will be limits to how much we can adapt. And nature-based solutions just offer so much on adaptation, but also what we've been talking throughout the last hour on these co-benefits that can help people live better lives inside cities, and ensure that they can have a good place to work and live, and also vulnerable communities, that they don't have to live in areas that will ultimately be vulnerable to landslides, for example. So I think a big takeaway for us is to understand how much all of this matters, and how much nature-based solutions can deliver and can be combined with other types of solutions like gray infrastructure, etc.
Mm. Yeah, all hands on deck. All solutions are needed. There can't be any silos. Also, we can't just do gray infrastructure, but we can't also just do green. We have to combine and look at the holistic goals and see how we best reach them.
Exactly.
Before we end, I want to give each of you just a chance for any final comments that we've missed, or anything that you want to highlight, or really like this is the core message that you want for people to take from this podcast. Mona, do you want to start?
I would just like to highlight that our future, if we really want to be sustainable and develop sustainably, lies in these nature-based solutions and not just run after gray solutions which give short-term results, but in the long run, the impact is so bad that now we have digressed from our traditional knowledge and we're now trying to go back to it with a new name called nature-based solutions. So we just need to give nature we need to value the significance and importance of nature and give it its actual space, and that's how sustainably we can grow further. Otherwise, I don't see a future very long for humankind to be existing anywhere across the globe.
It is a bit sad that we get to this point before we start valuing what nature can do for us. What about you, Gabriel?
I agree with Mona, so I want to repeat. So, but I want to highlight that this kind of solutions have to be multidisciplinary and also multi-stakeholders. We are discussing about all the departments inside of the city hall, but we have to bring the private sectors in some cases, and mainly we have to bring the social civil to the table at the beginning of the discussions, not just showing the projects or just implementing, show them what we bring to them. So this is the key for the successions of the nature-based solutions, because it's kind of a new thing. It's old knowledge, but it's kind of new things for the developments, the planning, the urban planning for the cities in Global South. So we have to discuss with them and bring this old knowledge to the table again.
Yeah, that's also some of the things that Mona mentioned from Kochi, where you have these broad stakeholder engagements before you even start designing the solutions. So Julia, as the final remark.
Thank you, Lasse. I'd like to actually end with a hopeful sort of remark. In the report, we look particularly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America as these regions that are urbanizing really fast, or our urbanization frontiers. And of course, there are several challenges. We've discussed them. We looked into the bottlenecks, etc. But these are regions that have an incredibly young population, resourceful technologies. There's a lot of potential for scaling nature-based solutions in each of these regions. There's a lot that still can be done in these regions as well. And actually, I think that just because of the fact that, women alone represent 1/3 of the NBS workforce globally, there's also a lot of opportunities for bridging many of the gaps and the socioeconomic insecurities and vulnerabilities present in these cities. So I think that nature-based solution can do a lot, and that's why I think it's important that us implementing and working to overcome these barriers, that we're cognizant of how much we can actually accomplish by designing better nature-based solutions infrastructure, as Gabriel said and as Monalisa said, with the on-the-ground knowledge from local communities, on-the-ground traditional knowledge, having a seat, making sure people have a seat at the table, not just as users of a certain implementation or a nature-based solution project, but also as co-designers, co-participants in how they are being planned out.
That's a good, both positive, but also a very important point that we can end on here. I like the positive notes at the end of the episodes. With that, I would like to thank all three of you for joining me. It's been a very interesting talk. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful engagement.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. If you want to delve deeper into the topics we've discussed today, then we've put links to both new publications from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center on how to overcome barriers in future-ready urbanization with nature-based solutions, and on business models for financing the solutions in the show notes. There you'll also find more information about linear parks in Campinas and canal restoration in Kochi.